I actually don't need to say your name at all, so I guess we'll just get started. Welcome to Something Positive for Positive People. I'm Courtney Brain. Something Positive for Positive People is a 501c3 nonprofit organization that connects people navigating STI stigma to mental health resources. This podcast features the lived experiences of people who are, I don't want to say struggling with, who are just living with the herpes simplex virus, right? So, we talk about their experiences from their diagnosis to disclosures to navigating the stigma, dating, sex, other STIs, and everything on the spectrum of that. So today's guest, you finished the group therapy.
Yes, I did.
I'm so happy. So, I mentioned that Something Positive for Positive People, we connect people to mental health resources. So what we're doing is with the money that we're raising, we're able to pay for people to get therapy, 12 sessions. And this previous cohort, it was a cohort. This was the first one that we did that was ongoing. There were 12 people who were originally signed up, and there were 12 sessions. They met once a week, and they met with one of our licensed mental health professionals that facilitated the support groups. So I would like for you to, I just remembered that you told me that you had a very intense herpes story. So let me preface this episode with trigger warning. And let's just start out with how the support group was for you. What was that like for you, being in group therapy?
Well, let's just say I'm really sad that it's over. I feel like I've never felt more supported with my diagnosis than being in the support group. And yeah, I had a really great time. I really enjoyed it. I wish we could still, just go on forever, but we can't.
Yeah.
I had a really good time.
Good. And I mean, if it were to go on forever, I guess that would be a good thing because you have those lifelong relationships and friendships that were built. Remind me after this, I have to get you the information if you want to stay connected to everybody. There's a thing I'm doing. So just remind me to remind you about that thing I'm doing for the people who've completed group therapy.
All right.
So let's start with what were some of your highlights from group therapy?
Well, overall, okay, so let's just say before I went to group therapy, I didn't really have very much support in general. So, of course, when I first got diagnosed, every time I told someone, I feel like I would either be pitied or people want me to educate them. So it was really nice to be in a space where it's we all kind of just, we're in the same boat. So it was so supportive. And I was I haven't felt that supported. And I really enjoyed supporting other people too. So that was a highlight just overall, just we all come from different walks of life, but we all just, we could just relate on that level. It was just really, really comforting in general. Just I'm not alone in the world,
Yeah.
So I think that was probably the number one thing that I would say.
Have you not been a part of any other support groups for people with HSV?
I've been a part of, some Facebook groups in the past a little bit. And then, probably that's about it. Probably about a couple Facebook groups, but I usually would join and then quit right away because, it was a lot of first, when people first get diagnosed and then they just, then they're so sad. It's just kind of the same thing. And it was just nice to be with people that were kind of I don't know, experienced herpes people, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So, yeah.
In navigating those two types of groups, you said you join and then leave right away because of it seems like venting that takes place in a lot of the herpes support groups. People come in, this is the worst thing that's ever happened to me. I'm newly diagnosed. No one's going to love me. And just seeing that over and over again can be traumatizing or re-traumatizing and re-triggering for you.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. Because, I understand too, because I was definitely there, of course. I think I talked a little bit to you about what happened when I got diagnosed. So I don't know if you want me to discuss that. I can for sure.
Yeah, go ahead.
So I'll just say it right out flat. A lot of people that I've heard of, come across, like online and maybe even in support groups, have said they got diagnosed with HSV because someone had cheated and brought it back, and that's how they found out that they had been cheated on, and that's how they found out that they had herpes. Well, yay, I'm that person. I was the cheater. So I was in a long-term relationship with a person, and we have a family, everything, and I have to say it was very immature, toxic, and definitely very abusive. And at the time, I didn't have a lot of coping skills in general as a human being, so I chose to be unfaithful to my partner, and of course, and like everybody else, I didn't know that you can still catch HSV if you use a condom. So I cheated on my partner, came home, and that's how he found out that I was cheating on him, because I caught HSV and I gave it to him. So after that, yeah, it was really bad. Not only was that, I was just diagnosed, it was the same thing, end of the world, but at the same time, I did that to someone else. So, and on top of that, there was abuse. And so we stayed together for, I think, maybe 5 or 6 more years after that. And that was a really good way of keeping me in the relationship, was to bring, to bring that up almost on a daily basis. You know what I mean? So, yeah, that's how I caught HSV. But so I got it right in the middle of my relationship. So I don't know, we stayed together for so much longer after that, and there were other reasons why I left, but eventually I left. And so after that happened, after I left, it was like I was freshly diagnosed, because when I first got it, I was with a partner and we stayed together for that long amount of time. So once I was single again, not only there was like so much shame, just even on top of the way I got it and what I did to another person. So I feel like this support group was a really good time for me, because I've been on my own for a little while, and it's just so much shame, so many layers of just stuff that, I've had to work through.
Yeah. And what ended this relationship for y'all? Because you had herpes and you stayed together for a while. So what was it that drove y'all apart?
Well, I would probably just resentment in general. That definitely fueled it. But because it was an abusive relationship, the abuse just got worse and worse, especially after this happened, right? So the abuse was bad. I had to leave. And then there was also drugs involved. So yeah, I had to leave just for my own safety, and definitely the herpes was used in the abuse almost daily.
Mm-hmm. Do you feel like you're at a place where you can talk to us a little bit about the abuse that you experienced and how that changed after your herpes diagnosis? And I ask this because if you're not in a good place to talk about it, please don't. But the reason that I want to hear from you what this experience was and share this with the audience is so that people understand what abuse also looks like. And if people are like, oh, I haven't been abused before, and think that just because someone didn't swing at you or punch you, that it's not really abuse. Like, I know that there are aspects of your story that illustrate this point in a way that it'll help a lot of other people. But if you're not okay with that, we can move on.
Yeah, I could probably touch on a little bit. So definitely, of course, my partner would say things like, you ruined my life. You did this to me. Now I will never have a life. And also, you can never leave me now. And so even before this, there was accusations of cheating when I didn't. And so, of course, because it's like I proved that I was a cheater, so it was constantly reminded that I was a cheater. I ruined the person's life. So that was like used to control me so I wouldn't leave. Also sexually, there was some abuse too there, where if the person, he could not perform sexually, and he blamed it on me because I was disgusting and dirty. And so there was sexual abuse there. And also there was other types of sexual assaults that happened, and just a lot of like verbal abuse. And the drug use too was used because he said that it was my fault and that this is why he had to do the things that he did. I was killing him. That the drug use was because of me, because I was unfaithful and I ruined his life by giving him herpes. And yeah, that's off the top of my head. That went on for probably 5 or 6 years daily.
And when you say that the herpes, like, things ramped up after your herpes diagnosis, like, what did abuse look like from that perspective?
Well, from my point of view, I took it as I deserved it. You know what I mean? Like, before that, I wanted to leave and I tried to leave, but after, I feel like I proved that I was not a worthy human being and I deserved the punishment that I was getting from my spouse. So it's like at a deep core level, along with like, you know, the shame of herpes stigma, there was also the shame of like, of feeling like I deserve this because, you know, I went out and cheated, right? So for me, that's what changed. So it was like, I knew that I deserved, you know, what I got, the treatment that I got. So that's probably the thing that changed the most. And then of course, because I knew it was true at the time that I didn't deserve love and I deserved this treatment, the treatment got worse and worse, and I just stuck around because I thought I deserved to be punished. Oh. Until of course, you know, it got so bad that I had to leave, or I think my life might be over.
Earlier, did you mention that y'all have a family?
Yes, we have kids together.
Ooh, okay. So I'm only I can only imagine that made things a lot more complicated.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm. Oh, I was the bad guy for sure.
Yeah.
In my home.
Okay. But now, I mean, I'm assuming that everything's okay. Like, has anything resurfaced between you, or like, what's your relationship like now?
Well, so funny you've asked because we have kids together. So they go to visit, and that's basically it, right? It's just, you know, we don't really talk, which is really good. But I think because our relationship went on so long, it was like we were together for, I think, 15 years. It went on probably 14 years too long. So by the time it was over, you know, I think we were kind of really sick of each other.
All right. So let's go here. All right. So
okay, sure. Let's do it.
You cheat, get herpes, and then you stay with your partner, I don't want to use baby daddy, but that. And you say that this relationship lasted 14 years longer than it should have. How is it that the abuse that came after herpes, now granted, you felt like you deserved the treatment that you were getting because you, quote, ruined everything, ruined the family, I guess we would say.
Yeah.
How did you allow for a relationship to go on beyond what it should have for 14 years?
Oh, dang. The way I was raised. So, you know, I come from a family that, you know, like my parents, they did the same thing. So it's, you know, I'm the oldest kid too. So it's like, I'm going to make it work. So, and also they would break up and get back together so often, and we would move so often, and we would run away, move to a different school, and then come back. And then it was like so much of this that I didn't want to do that to my kids. And so, you know, I was like diehard. I was determined, you know what I mean? Like, no, I'm going to make it work. And also on top of that, I think maybe a little bit of religious undertones too. And also, you know, control and abuse. So that's my recipe for the opposite of success.
Yeah. Was this your first time cheating?
Yes.
And dang, okay, I was going to ask if you had any experience with STIs prior to this.
Before my relationship, I got HPV, that, you know, good old HPV that everyone has. Yeah, I got that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Why? That was so casual of you to be able to say, yeah, I got HPV, but, you know, HSV is like one letter difference, and it, My
I
God,
know.
I
Oh
got
my god. And
herpes.
I
No.
know, and it's funny because HSV is so what would I say? It's not. It doesn't affect your health, so we all know this good old stigma, right? But yeah. Oh god.
So it sounds like you've dealt with a few different stigmas, not just like dealing with your STI status, but also like your religion stigma and your beliefs about relationship stigma. Um, did the relationship become abusive after herpes, or had it always been and it was more subtle, or what?
I think it was definitely, I would say, because I'm 35 right now and we were together for 15 years and I've been single for 2. So we were together since I was basically a kid. And so I think at the beginning we were just kind of like, we're really just immature. And maybe still, but like at the beginning it was just very immature, very emotionally immature. And so we were kind of like playing house, right? But it became controlling, and then like really controlling, and then herpes. Well, there was blaming before that, right? Like, you're gonna cheat on me, where are you going, who are you dressing up for, all that classic stuff. And then after the herpes is when like actual like verbal abuse, mental abuse, and at the very end a little bit of physical abuse happened. So yeah, I think before that it was just like, which is probably still abuse, which is just like a lot of controlling.
You also mentioned some sexual abuse, and then you mentioned that what I heard you say was basically that he couldn't get hard, performance issues, right? Was that it? How does abuse look in a sexual relationship where the male partner is unable to perform?
I think just because there was mental and psychological abuse there, because he would tell me he couldn't perform because of me, because I was disgusting, and because I ruined his life. So it was mostly just like psychological, mental, and verbal,
Okay.
based on that.
All right, so like we're talking about like you initiating sex or him initiating sex, and then just it's not happening, and he talks down to you because of it, and is like, this, my absence of an erection is your fault. You did this.
Yeah.
So it's just that psychological manipulation.
Oh yes.
Okay. How was the forgiveness process? Like, not just from him to you, but from you to him, because you stayed together after this happened. Not only did you cheat, but you also passed herpes on to him from cheating. So what was the forgiveness process there?
It was not good. Like, I feel like, because that's a huge thing, right? Because not only was trust broken, like deep trust in a relationship, like a monogamous relationship, it was like all the shame. It didn't go very well. And that's what I was saying. I think because of that, there was so much resentment that built up. And I basically shut down and said, okay, I deserve it. And then it ramped up because, he was trying to express the way he felt too, right? Like, that's, betrayal. So I don't think forgiveness happened. It just got worse and worse. And then because now we're not together, I think now we have time to finally like work through those things on our own. So we haven't really been able to, work together on that while we were together, for sure. I think it's kind of just like a lone process, after the fact.
Yes. I forgot the question I was about to ask you. Just completely lost it. Well, I guess, nope. I'm so mad at myself for having lost it.
Oh, it was probably a good one too.
I don't know. I think it was something that would have probably warranted a little bit of rambling. Here's a good point to like get to the group therapy, I guess. We can just segue into that. Like, I'm curious to know if you learned things in group therapy that you wish that you would have known upon diagnosis.
Oh my God. Yeah, so many. Okay, just for one, we talked a lot about boundaries and values. And, just in general in life, that would have been great, So we were talking about HSV and group, but of course it goes beyond that, right? We're talking about like not having boundaries, like I didn't have any boundaries ever in my life. I came from a very codependent family dynamic, right? So, I didn't even know what a boundary was. Like one time I was in a mom's group and they talked about this book called Boundaries, but I was like, oh, what's a boundary? And I was like back in the day. And then after that, whatever, right? I went home and just had no boundaries. But, when we talked about that in group, that was like, wow. And, being single a little, I've been on my own for 2 years now. It's been a really good chance to kind of work on my boundaries. But here's the thing that I've never really thought about until group is values. Like one time I was listening to your podcast and you were talking about values. I was like, wow, it's just, what an adult. And so we talked about that a lot in group. And I was like, I'm really still kind of curious about values. And, I probably have some, but that's one thing I'm working on a lot, just, on a personal development, perspective in general. So did that answer your question? I don't even remember. But yeah. Boundaries and values. Oh my God, I'm determined.
Yeah, boundaries and values are things that I've learned more about through exploring sex positivity, BDSM, and kink. And the more that I get into it, the more I lean into the information that's being presented and available, the more I see like the way that I've learned BDSM as an adult is the exact same way that we should be able to teach it to adolescents. And I say that because when we talk about BDSM, the prerequisites or the negotiations aspects, you're gauging someone, getting to know them, and you're communicating your boundaries with them. You're asking for what you need. You're saying no sometimes, probably. You're expected to receive a no very healthily and well, and you want to be able to recognize and identify abusers and get them up out of there ASAP, right? So us omitting these aspects of the conversation with our youth, we're setting up our youth to be not only boundaryless kids, but they're going to turn into boundaryless adults. And without those boundaries, what ends up happening is you don't know what your boundaries are, so subconsciously you're communicating that on a regular basis, and everyone you interact with is kind of doing the same thing. You're influencing one another's behaviors without probably even knowing that you're doing so, right? So when we can get to a place where like our adults are comfortable with talking about our bodies and what those body functions are, and then talk about like energetically, hey, here's how you have a healthy relationship, then we run into significantly less incidents, not just like miscommunication incidents, not just sexual assault, not just verbal abuse or physical abuse, but like all of that stuff that comes around it as well, like drama within friendships, disconnects in relationships, disconnects between yourself and your place of employment. We have got to be able to get these boundaries in place. And just bringing it back full circle, like as an adult, I know that I can take boundaries conversations into any interaction that I have. If someone wants to talk about politics and I'd rather just not talk about politics and I kind of have a feel for how that conversation will go with them, I just decide, hey, I like that you want to connect with me and that you want to do so in regards to politics, but that's not my jam right now. Or like, I'd rather not talk about that, not in this place, right? So me just seeing how valuable boundaries are that I've had to learn as an adult man from BDSM and kink, being able to pull that out of there and take it into my everyday life. And even in my one-on-one sexual relationships, boundaries are transferable. They translate very, very well, no matter what it is that you are setting boundaries around, or what you're asking for, what you're saying no to, or requesting or what you're being told no about.
It's interesting too, like as an adult, because I started having kids when I was 20 years old, and so have no boundaries, and all of a sudden, like 15 years later, I'm like, okay, I have these adolescent children. I don't have boundaries. I don't know what the heck I'm doing. But then all of a sudden I have these adolescent kids. So it's like I have to play catch up because now I have to teach these kids, boundaries or something, right? So it's just like a lot. Not only is it me and boundaries with myself and with my relationships, but teaching my kids too. So then when they are adults, you know, they have respect for themselves, respect for others also, right? And they can have healthy relationships. So it's just like a little bit of pressure.
Yeah. And I also want to know, what was the facilitator like? Like, what were your thoughts on the facilitator of your group therapy session?
Well, I thought she was really chill. Sometimes I have some. It takes me a while to warm up in general. I'm really good with like casual conversations, you know, when I'm like sitting around outside, you know, stuff like that. But it's hard for me, especially in Zoom. You know, I don't go on Zoom or whatever very often. But she was very chill, so I felt at home and I felt like I could share. You know what I mean? So I felt like she really made us feel comfortable, and it was really great too. I don't know if I can say this, but she was also HSV positive, so it was great because we knew that, well, I knew that, well, I'm sure all of us knew that she could also relate to us on this same, you know, it wasn't just someone sitting there, you know, just like, I understand, but she actually she did, right? So I really enjoyed her a lot.
Good. Now, do you feel like you could have gotten the same thing out of a therapist who did not share their HSV status?
No.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking too. So I wonder, because a lot of people that I've spoken to with a therapist have not told their therapist that they have herpes, but they'll tell me, and they'll be willing to pay for a therapist themselves, and having two therapists just so that they have one therapist that they can talk to about their HSV diagnosis. And so I just thought that was interesting there.
Yeah. And you know, like, there's, when you tell someone that doesn't have it, there's always this aspect that they don't understand. You know what I mean? Or like, I can always pick up on someone just kind of like, oh, you poor thing. It's like, you know, that's very disempowering. You know what I mean? So it's just nice that, you know, if somebody knows how it is, they're not going to give you like, oh, you know, oh, how could somebody have done that to you? Or, oh, I feel so sorry for you. Like, no, frig off.
Yeah.
God, you know. So it's nice to, like, you know, be on the same page, especially with a professional, right? It's like, makes it more real. And I personally can connect to that more.
I appreciate that. I like that. And then was the sharing that took place, was any of it too much, or was there anything that was triggering for you that came up while you were in the meeting, or when you were in the group meetings, whether it be something that someone else said or whether you witnessed it yourself?
I wouldn't say so. I think at the beginning a little bit, I was thinking about the ways in which I got herpes and gave it to my partner. You know, that came up a little bit, but not anything that anyone was said particularly. It was really great. Oh man, we could have talked so much longer. And I loved hearing what everyone had to say. It was really encouraging, and I appreciated that everyone was at different stages in their journey. Like, you know, some of the people were newer to diagnosis, so, you know, because, you know, I think I've had it probably around the same amount of time that you have, like 8 years or 6 years, I don't know, something.
Yeah.
But you know, I'm kind of like an old pro. So it was, you know, some of the people were newer, so I felt really happy to kind of encourage and just give my experience, just to encourage people, right? Or people that had better experience with disclosures. Oh man, it was just, everything was so valuable. Just everybody's perspectives. It really helped me out with my own thought processes, right? It's like, you know, when you're going along in life and then someone just says something that you need to hear at the time. There was just so much of that every minute. So, it was just great. We could have talked for hours, but, you know, we had to get through it.
Yeah. And I just can't thank you enough, because that was the first one. There's going to be many more. Now that I have an idea what this looks like, we can present it in different ways. So I'm pumped. I'm thrilled. I'm excited. Let's make this happen.
Well, I'm so appreciative. It was a really, really good experience. And I didn't even realize how much support that I actually needed. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So it was really amazing. And I don't know how everyone else felt, but I felt like we kind of just became a little family. And it was just really nice to encourage other people that are going through the same thing. You know what I mean? And another thing, you know, I feel like a lot of times when we think about herpes, we're thinking about our interpersonal relationships, right? And I didn't realize for a long time, it's like I don't even have a very good relationship with myself. And so through this journey, especially like with the group support, like the support group, we're talking about disclosure and all of these things, I realized like, you know, I need to have a better relationship with myself before, you know, I can go out and have these conversations or have relationships with other people, you know? So at the end of the whole thing, I really came to the conclusion that what I'm going to do is just focus on loving myself and, you know, having a good relationship with myself, right?
Yeah.
Or, you know, the RuPaul thing. The quote from RuPaul, I could say. But yeah.
I can only imagine that if you're invited to share, like, oh, how were you diagnosed, blah, 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 that you would be met with resistance or like just a little bit of resentment because you're the one who cheated and went out here and had sex and brought it back to your partner, right?
Yeah.
So I guess like how did it feel? Was there any discomfort around you being perceived as the bad guy for doing to someone exactly what other people in that room might have had done to them?
Yeah, you know what? I'm glad that you said that because I think that that's what triggered me. Is somebody was talking about the way they were diagnosed, and it's like I know the other side to that. I'm not sure if I actually shared it in group because I want to be there to support, right? But at the same time, it's like I'm the villain too. But I don't want to like trigger other people. But that's probably something that I would probably save for a private session because I don't want to trigger or traumatize others either, right? But yeah, it definitely would. I know for sure that people would definitely have some resentment or rightly so. Everyone's entitled to whatever they feel. So
yeah. So do you feel like you got anything out of this? Like, I know you said boundaries and values, but in relation to herpes, though, because what I'm hearing here is that there's so much other things that are more prevalent than our HSV status. So when you were, when you were in the group, like, did you feel as if herpes was even a big deal?
I don't know. Yes and no.
Okay. Talk to me.
Let's think. So, we all know the stigma is the biggest fucking deal, right? But, oh God. But, no, I feel like it's just herpes just brings up all the other things that you have to get through. You know what I mean? It's like, and I've come to know now that I feel kind of lucky and blessed that this happened to me because it's like it forced me to look within, right? And so when we were talking about all these things in group, I really start looking within and, all the self-love stuff. I don't know. I did a Courtney thing. I kind of forgot what I was talking about.
Yeah.
I forgot the question I was just about to ask.
Oh, you forgot the question that you were going to ask.
Yeah, except it was the answer that I was going to present.
So I guess I think I've created this misconception that if people enroll in therapy, it's for herpes. And that isn't the case at all. Whenever I reach out to people and I'm trying to get them enrolled, it's just because, a handful of people have been following me for a round. Some rapport has been built. And, so I also just, let me see. I think that they believe that because it's therapy for people with herpes, that it's exclusively about herpes. and they're like, oh, I don't have a problem with my herpes. But even that statement has a little bit of an avoidant undertone to it. So it's
Yeah.
like, I don't have to deal with this, so I'm not going to deal with this.
Mhm. But it's like once, at the beginning, right, you get the news and you're devastated. My life is over. No one's going to love me. I have no future. And, you kind of sit with those feelings and you go through it a little bit or a lot. And then eventually kind of, that phase, hopefully you heal from that phase. But then you get down to all the other stuff. You know what I mean? And so it's like, herpes kind of forces you to do that, right? Because it's like a lot of us, we put our emphasis on our external relationships or our sexuality and our roles, you know what I mean? So it's like all of these things have been turned around, and you have to kind of like look at like, well, what do I really believe? What is really my worth? Because my body that's not all my worth, right? My sexuality, and especially when with me and being on my own for a couple of years, trying to do this dating thing, I realized like, I don't treat myself very kindly because I'm trying to go with people that don't respect, when I tell them it's like all of a sudden they don't want anything to do with me. Well, why am I going with these people anyway? So I have to look at that too, right? And it's like, well, I need to treat myself in a more kind way, right? Or why am I looking to be with people that aren't going to appreciate me for who I am rather than what I represent, as an object to them, right? So it's just like, thank you, herpes, because I don't even know if that I would have, maybe when I don't know, about 80, I could have came to these conclusions. But look at me, herpes. It's like a fast track.
Yeah, it is. And that the herpes, I say, is so many different things. Like, I think it's a launch pad to sex education. I think it's a great filter for weeding out your partners. Because if you got it, just because you have it now doesn't mean that not having it was such a major contributor to whether or not you would have found your person. You know what I mean? Or your people. So because you are now equipped with this tool, this BS detector, right? You now know, you now are so much closer to getting to your person because they're either not going to care or they're going to have it too. So it's as simple as that. And realistically speaking, your chances of rejection are probably 1 out of 3 because you may get the response of me too, or tell me more, or no, I don't want anything to do with that. And I think that those are just like the main outcomes that someone who's living with herpes can expect to receive from someone who may not even know what their own status is.
Yeah.
And we give way too much credit to them. It goes back to the values and boundaries. You can't see values, you can't see boundaries, but they're a necessity, right? And with herpes, it is something that's on the surface and it's seen. So it's much easier to point the finger at the herpes, than it is to actually sit, breathe, and like feel into your body and feel into your emotional body and go, this doesn't like serve me, right? So being able to have these values, being able to have these boundaries, and having them together as a result of having gone through your group therapy and hearing about values and boundaries from other people. Because I sat in on the last session, and that was something that they talked about very briefly in mantras. I think that it expands our perspective and an opportunity. It gives us more of an opportunity for us to grow and develop by hearing other people articulate in their own language, hearing the exact same thing, because it may sound different to someone and it may be said in a way that resonates differently for someone else.
Yeah. Oh, and there was so much of that happened. It was really amazing.
Yeah. I was curious to know like what would happen if, for me, I'm super paranoid about if I lead a support group and someone, feels really safe and empowered to share, and they share something that's just really heavy and really unfortunate, like perhaps having experienced childhood sexual abuse, right? If someone were to share that in a room, Are they going to be met with stares that make them feel like, oh my God, I shouldn't have shared that. I should keep this to myself. I should never tell anyone this. This was stupid, 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 punch themselves in the head? Or are they going to be met with, support and healing and the professional guidance and responses that they should get? Or what was the other part? Oh, or a bystander, someone in the room who's hearing this and becoming damaged even more and becoming more triggered because of it. So like, it's important for me to have and know a licensed mental health professional is on these calls for the HSV support groups, because this is just like that. This is the nature of this field, because sexual health and mental health are so interconnected, and the way that we view sex is often something that stems from the mind, past experiences, future hopes. And yeah, that's I'm rambling now. Go ahead if you had anything to add to that.
Well, all I can do is, I think, hold space. And yeah, I definitely appreciate like a professional, right? Because there's a lot of heaviness, and I think everybody needs the space and the support and the love to work through things that like that, if especially if it's in a group setting. I know in our group, people would share, and it was really nice because then everybody would offer encouraging experiences or just encouragements like, we love you. And it was really, really great to see that. And it was really great to just like feel the love, you know what I mean? It was like really good energy, good healing in general, like together. Mm-hmm. It's like, hey, people need people, right? And it's really easy to just isolate, especially with something like this. But there's so many people out there that are going through the same thing, and so it's like you can just be alone together, and it's just really magical.
Yeah, alone but together.
Yes.
Sounds like a podcast episode title.
Yeah.
Do you have any last bits of anything, information, or details that you want to share? Even if we if you could go back and give yourself like a little piece of advice, what do you have for us?
A piece of advice that I'd give myself would be run away. Run away. No. I would say in general to everyone out there, just like, you're not alone. You're so amazing, and it's going to be okay. In general, if I was like to my old little self back in the day, I would just say, you're loved. You're going to get through this, and you're a magical person. All this, this doesn't define you, because it doesn't, right? And like, we're kind of lucky because we have this thing that's going to help us to love ourselves, to value ourselves more. So I don't know, might be weird, and in my story, I'm kind of like the villain in my story, but it's like that stuff that I really had to work through, right? Like, because we all know the shame that we feel at the beginning, and, but working through that, yeah. Oh my God. Yeah. And then, you work through all that and you're like, man, I'm a champion. So It's just, we need to give ourselves credit and be kind to ourselves too, because it takes a while. Even if you are the bad guy, we still all deserve to have a good life and, self-love, and to have good relationships where you're treated with magic and love by someone, or, whoever you're with.
Amen.
I guess that's probably all I have to say.
All right. Well, I thank you so much for making the time for this call today and being able to let me record this and share this out there with the world. You participating in this along with everybody else has really meant a lot to me personally, so that I can feel like I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing. Like, we're on the natural trajectory of where I want something positive for positive people to be. So hopefully we can launch another cohort for people who are living with HSV to be able to get the same therapy that you were able to get.
Yeah, and I definitely encourage, if people can participate, to do so, even if you don't think that you need to. It's such a great thing that you did, for sure. Like, I feel like I've gained a lot from it, just personally, it was a really amazing experience. So I appreciate it, Courtney. I thank you.
Thank you. All right, that concludes this episode of Something Positive for Positive People. Please like, rate, review, share, subscribe to this podcast, and of course, donate to the nonprofit by the same name. We're paying for people to get therapy. Yes, we are paying for people to receive therapy. Every donation counts, all of it. If you're someone who can make a donation, please do. Please consider it. Visit www.spfpp.org. Again, that's spfpp.org. Till next time, stay sex positive.